Hey there, mystery lovers. It's MsStoryMystery. Welcome to, or welcome back to my channel, where the eerie, the unexplained, and the downright chilling come to life. Tonight, we're diving into tales that blur the line between reality and nightmare, exploring haunted homes, mysterious figures, and the moments that make you question everything you thought you knew. So, grab your coziest blanket, settle in, and prepare to get thoroughly spooked. Episode 36 starts now. When I was 8, my family moved into this ridiculously massive house that honestly we didn't need. It was originally a duplex that someone had converted into a single family home, so it had all these strange quirks, like a semi-finished attic we turned into a playroom, and a basement that could only be described as nightmare fuel. Oh, and let's not forget the wheelchair that was just sitting there in the basement when we moved in. We never got rid of it either, because apparently that's normal, right? There was also this narrow, secret passage-style staircase connecting the second floor to the basement. It was probably intended for the original upstairs tenants to get down there, but in my head, it was clearly built so whatever creepy entities were lurking in the basement could sneak up to the bedrooms. Even the bike shed out back gave me the creeps. Nothing about this house felt right. From the very beginning, I hated being there. I remember playing alone in my room and getting this overwhelming sense of dread, like someone was standing behind me, leaning over my shoulder. It was the kind of feeling that made your skin crawl. That wasn't a one-time thing either. It happened a lot. The attic? Finished, sure, but there were always dead flies on the windowsills, and it had this musty, sour smell. Even when I had friends over, it felt heavy and wrong, like something didn't want us there. Years later, my mom admitted she had the same feelings about the house. She hated it too. Just this constant undercurrent of discomfort. To cope, I started playing Paul Simon's Graceland on repeat as I fell asleep. I was convinced no ghost could stand up to the positive vibes of that record. Then there was the night I had a nightmare and went to crawl into my parents' bed, something I did often. But when I opened their bedroom door, I saw this figure standing by the window. The silhouette looked kind of hunched and messy, and I thought it was my mom. She has this habit of getting up and staring out windows sometimes, so I didn't think much of it. I just turned around and went back to my room. The next morning, I casually asked her what she'd been looking at. She looked at me confused and said she'd never gotten out of bed. To this day, I can still see that shadowy figure outlined by the orange glow of the streetlights. I have no idea what I saw that night. We moved out of that house when I was 13, and I wish I could say the story ended there. But nope. For the last 30 years, I've had recurring dreams about moving back into that house. It's usually 1 or 2 a year, and they're always weirdly vivid. Sometimes the house is exactly the same as we left it. Same furniture, same layout, even the food still rotting in the fridge. Other times my parents are moving back, but they're acting off, like they're hypnotized or something, while I'm standing there saying, nope, not happening. I'm never setting foot in this place again. Occasionally, the house has been renovated or updated, but the vibe is still wrong. Once I dreamed I was digging under the front porch and found this creepy old ring, and I woke up feeling like I'd actually touched it. Last week, I dreamed my wife and I had moved in with our family. I was lighting a fire in the wood stove on the second floor when I saw a figure in the next room. My protective instincts kicked in, and I charged in, only to see this 7-foot tall, wrinkly man in black robes. He looked like that terrifying dude from Poltergeist 2. Somewhere in my head, I realized I was dreaming, so I tackled him and woke up in a cold sweat. I don't know what's up with that house. I walk by it sometimes when I'm back in my hometown. The new owners painted it and put up a basketball net. They seem happy there, but I'll never understand how. After the hurricane destroyed our home, we were lucky to have a place to go. My husband's uncle's house. It had been sitting empty for a while after his wife passed away a few years ago, and then, unexpectedly, he passed away a few months ago. Despite the history, I didn't think twice about moving in. I'm a skeptic by nature. Ghosts? Spirits? Not even a blip on my radar. So we packed up and moved in. Me, my husband, our kids, and my mom. Not long after, my mom went to stay with my brother for a couple of weeks, and my husband had to leave town for work. That left just me and the kids in the house. I work late hours, so I sleep during the day, and since the kids are on school break, they stay up late and sleep in too. A couple of days ago, I woke up at 2:30 in the afternoon feeling off. Something just wasn't right. That's when I heard my Akita growling. She's a quiet dog, has never even barked before. Hearing her growl instantly put me on edge. I leaned out of bed to look down the hallway, and there she was, standing alert, growling low and steady. From where I was sitting, if I leaned just right, I could see straight down the hall, through the dining room, and into the living room. That's when I saw it. Something solid. Not a shadow or a trick of the light, this was a solid figure. It moved across the entrance to the living room, and it blocked out the light completely. My first thought was that it had to be a person. It was huge, though, like 7.5 feet tall. Adrenaline kicked in. I grabbed my gun and ran out there, fully expecting to confront someone. The direction it moved led to a little corner where we'd set up the Christmas tree. There's no way out of that corner. It's boxed in. But when I get there, nothing. No one. I was completely awake, 100% sure of what I saw, and yet, nothing. I did a head count of the kids. They were all still in bed, sound asleep. And none of them are even close to 7 feet tall anyway. Meanwhile, the birds in their cage were going crazy, the dog was still growling, and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I was convinced there had been an intruder, but it didn't make sense. There was no way anyone could have slipped past me. I went back to my room, shaken but trying to stay rational. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring down the hallway, trying to process what had just happened. About 30 seconds later, I noticed the light and TV in my closet flicker off for a split second. I tried to tell myself maybe I just blinked too long because I was on edge. But then, 10 seconds later, the power flashed on and off 4 times. That's when things got even weirder. When the power came back on, the TV was still on YouTube. At our old house, whenever the power went out, the Roku would always reset, but not this time. At that point, I was done. I wanted to grab the kids, run outside, and never come back. But I couldn't leave them sleeping alone in their rooms, so I just sat there. My mind raced for hours. I ended up covering the mirrors in my bedroom because every flicker of light from the TV reflecting in them made me panic even more. Everything felt wrong. It's been quiet since then, but I'm still on edge. Every time I look down that hallway, I feel like I'm bracing for something. And now I'm stuck here wondering, what did I see? It wasn't black like a shadow. It looked like a person, solid, wearing clothes, and it moved with purpose. I've always said I wanted proof of something paranormal, but now that I might have gotten it, I don't want it anymore. My husband and daughter have a New Year's trip coming up, and I'm supposed to stay here with my 10-year-old, but after what happened, I don't know if I can do it. I don't believe in this stuff, or at least I didn't. But whatever I saw, I can't explain it. And I don't think I'll ever forget it. Let me start by saying I'm not exactly a believer in the paranormal, but I'm not a full-on skeptic either. I'm kind of stuck in the middle when it comes to things that are plausible but unprovable, like aliens, ghosts, religion, you name it. When I was younger, I had a few weird experiences, but I've always chalked them up to an overactive kid imagination. They were all the same. Me, lying in bed, hearing or seeing something, but realistically, it was probably just my parents checking on me. Fast forward to tonight. I'm visiting my family and staying at my mom's house. It's currently 3:42 a.m. I tried to go to bed around 2, but after lying there for a while and failing miserably at falling asleep, I just gave up. About 30 minutes passed with me aimlessly fiddling around on my guitar before I decided to get up and wander around the house a bit. As I walked out of my room and down this long hallway, I glanced back over my shoulder. That's when I swear I saw someone, or something, ducking around the corner into the room I had just left. In the moment, I told myself it was nothing, probably just my tired eyes playing tricks on me. But now, thinking back, I'm not so sure. I kept walking, heading toward the kitchen. On my way, I passed the dining room and noticed one of the chairs was pulled out. It was the chair I'd been sitting in earlier during dinner. Now, maybe I forgot to push it back in, but I was pretty sure I had. And I know for a fact nobody went back in there after we finished eating. Shrugging it off, I grabbed a water from the kitchen like I'd planned and started heading back to my room. That's when things got weird. I noticed my light was off, and I know, without a doubt, I left it on. I'm talking 1000% sure. At that point, I didn't even try to investigate. Nope, I just turned right around and headed for the living room where I am now, sitting on the couch and writing this. Everything else that happened tonight I could explain away. Maybe I imagined the figure in the hallway. Maybe I forgot to push the chair in. But the light? That's the one thing I can't explain. Nobody else could have done it, and it definitely wasn't me. I'm not saying I believe in ghosts or anything, but I'm seriously struggling to come up with another explanation. And right now, I'm just trying to make it through the rest of the night without losing my mind. A few days ago, I was home, not completely alone, but close. My 6-year-old son was fast asleep, and my partner had taken his grandmother to the hospital after she suffered a concussion. His sister was at work, so it was just me, my son, and our 2 little dogs. Out front, there's a red rose bush I've been nursing back to health. It was planted by my partner's late mother, and taking care of it feels like a way to honor her memory, something I want to do for my partner and his sister. The bush has been thriving lately, and I'd cut a rose from it a few days ago, leaving it on the front porch railing. Even with heavy winds, the rose had stayed put, until that morning. While they were at the hospital, I poured my coffee into a mug with a big, bold red rose painted on it and glanced out the front door. That's when I noticed the rose wasn't on the railing anymore. It had fallen, or maybe been placed, on the porch floor, right in front of the door at the top of the steps. It struck me as odd, but I didn't think much of it. I left the rose where it was and didn't open the door. My son was still asleep after all. Later, I stepped out onto the back porch to smoke and let the dogs out. One of them wandered out of sight, probably toward the road out front. I decided to check on him, so I left the back door open. It opens inward into a bedroom, and planned to come right back. The other dog stayed nearby on the porch. I quickly walked through the house, opened the front door, and looked toward the road. Sure enough, the missing dog was there. I called him, and he started running around the house towards the back. That's when I noticed something strange. The rose that had been on the porch floor was gone. Just gone. I hesitated, scanned the area, and saw nothing out of place except for that missing rose. Feeling unsettled, I closed the door and headed back to the back porch. What I found froze me in my tracks. The back door, which I had left open, was now shut completely. The dog I'd left on the back porch was on the other side of the door, looking in at me. Here's the thing. That door is tough to close. It doesn't just swing shut on its own. You either have to slam it or pull it shut firmly with both hands. There was no way the dog could have done it. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding, staring at the door. I finally walked over, opened it, and stepped out onto the porch. The dogs were there, but nothing else. Nobody was in the house or outside creeping around, at least no one I could see or hear. My son never woke up, and I even ran a test to see if opening and closing the front door could somehow cause the back door to move. It didn't. It couldn't. The AC wasn't on, and there was no wind. What made it creepier, at least for me, was the rose mug. I'd poured my morning coffee into that mug right before all this happened. A big, bold, red rose on the mug, just like the one from the bush. This wasn't my first unsettling experience in this house either. Once, a while back, I was relaxing on the front porch around 3 a.m. Everyone else was asleep, and I was just sitting there, just quietly meditating. Nothing deep, just slow breathing, enjoying the breeze and distant wind chimes. My phone was locked and sitting a few inches from my feet. No alarms, no apps running, and it requires a PIN to unlock. Out of nowhere, music started playing from my phone. It was unlocked, my music app was open, and it was playing a very specific song. A song about questioning reality, feeling like you've been somewhere before, and hearing bells and wind. It's a deeply personal song for me, and at the time, it hit me hard. I didn't find any malware on my phone, and I can't say for sure someone wasn't messing with me, but it didn't feel like that. Here's the thing. My partner's mom was a strong, vibrant person who passed far too young. She had a complicated relationship with her mother, who, frankly, mistreated her even up to her death. I feel this odd connection to her sometimes. My son, who has such a similar personality to hers, was born just 2 weeks after she passed. Over the years, strange coincidences have slowly unraveled, ones that tie her life to mine in ways I can't fully explain. I don't know if any of this means anything, or if it's all just in my head. But those moments, the rose, the door, the music, they've stayed with me. I still don't have answers, and maybe I never will. When I was 16, I worked at my county museum over the holidays. My job was to give tours of one of the outdoor buildings, which was usually this old house from 1855. A doctor had built it for his family, and the museum preserved it so well that stepping inside felt like you were intruding in someone's home. Everything was set up as if they'd just stepped out for a moment. Dishes on the table, coats by the door. It had this eerie, almost too real vibe. On slow days, I'd just sit in the main entrance, waiting for people to stop by. If the weather was bad or nothing much was happening, I'd be alone for hours. One day, it was raining, and I'd only seen about 3 visitors in 2 hours. So, there I was, scrolling on my phone, just trying to pass the time. That's when I heard it. A noise behind the door about 5 feet away from me. I knew exactly what was behind that door. The servants' stairs and the cellar door. It startled me a little, but I told myself it was nothing and went back to scrolling. Then I heard it again. It sounded like something small, maybe a mouse or some kind of rustling. Bored and slightly annoyed, I decided to check it out. I opened the door, but the noise kept going. That's when I realized it wasn't coming from the stairs. It was coming from the cellar door. My stomach dropped. That cellar was straight out of a horror movie. If you've seen The Conjuring, you know what I'm talking about. Dark, old, and absolutely terrifying. I'd opened the door before, but I'd never gone down there. No way. Still, I was curious and maybe a little too bored, so after debating with myself, I opened the cellar door. The second I did, the noise stopped. Everything stopped. The house, which always creaked and groaned, went completely silent. I just stood there, frozen, staring into the darkness for what felt like forever. Then I closed the door, locked it, because kids love to pester me about going down there, and went back to my chair. But the quiet didn't last. Not long after, I heard creaking. Loud, deliberate creaking, like someone heavy was walking upstairs. Now, this house was old, so everything creaked, but I knew this sound. You know how when you're at home, there's that one floorboard that always creaks? You recognize it instantly. I knew exactly where the sound was coming from. One of the bedrooms upstairs. It went on for about 30 seconds before stopping. I sat there, completely still, trying to make sense of it. The only way upstairs was through the main entrance where I was sitting, and no one had come in. I would have seen or heard them. Still, I tried to brush it off. Old house, creaky floors, maybe just the wind or the house settling. I told myself anything to stay calm and went back to scrolling. About 45 minutes later, a small group of people came in. I gave them a tour, showing them around like nothing was wrong. Nothing weird happened while they were there, so I thought maybe I just imagined it all earlier. I said goodbye to the group and sat back down. Then I sneezed. What happened next made my blood run cold. Clear as day, I heard someone say, "Bless you." It was so distinct, so real, that I whipped my head around expecting to see someone standing there. But there was no one. The room was completely empty. just like in every bad horror movie, I said, "Hello?" But no one answered. I waited for another 30 minutes thinking maybe someone had snuck in and was hiding. But no one ever showed. The house was empty, and the voice was still ringing in my ears. After that, let's just say I volunteered to tour other buildings whenever I could. I still don't know what I heard that day, but I wasn't sticking around to find out. I need to get this off my chest, especially after what happened 2 weeks ago. Sorry if this gets long, but I feel like I need to start from the beginning for it all to make sense. I've always believed my parents' house was haunted. Actually, both houses we lived in were. The first house I grew up in, there were things I saw between the ages of 4 and 6 that I still don't understand. My parents saw and heard things too, but that's a story for another day. When I was 6, we moved into a new house, hoping to leave the strange experiences behind. At first, it seemed like we did. This house had a weird vibe though, especially one room in the center of the house that we called the Orange Room because of its bright orange carpet. It was this awkward in-between space that connected the living room, kitchen, and bathrooms. You had to walk through it to get anywhere. From the start, I hated it. Something about that room just felt off. For a few years, nothing really happened. My recurring nightmares from the old house stopped, and I started to think maybe this house would be different. Then, one night, everything changed. The house was built on old train tracks. The tracks had been removed and turned into a road, but some of the wood was used in the house's construction. I didn't know any of this at the time. I was about 9 when I first heard it. The sound of a train whistle. I was sitting in the Orange Room playing with Legos and heard it clear as day. I looked out the big bay windows, but there was nothing. No trains, no tracks, no people. There wasn't even a train within 50 miles of us anymore. When I asked my mom, she said it was probably just a truck horde. But I was obsessed with trains back then. I knew the difference. It was a train whistle. I tried to convince myself I was imagining things, but it was hard to ignore. One day, my neighbor casually mentioned that her house had been built using wood from the old train tracks. That gave me the chills. It felt like confirmation that what I was hearing was real. After that, things got worse. My mom tried to brush off the small stuff, like shadows darting behind chairs, pictures falling off tables, or a Christmas bell ringing when she was home alone. She always had an explanation. The window was open, the AC was on, it was just the breeze. But one night, even she couldn't explain what happened. The clock in the living room was this heavy piece that hung above the fireplace. Beneath it was the mantel decorated with picture frames and Halloween decorations. One night, while we were asleep, my mom woke to the sound of a loud crash. She dragged my dad out of bed, and they went to check it out. The clock had fallen, but instead of landing on the mantel where it logically should have, it was lying face down in the middle of the living room, about 10 feet away. The mantel was untouched. Nothing was out of place. The next day, my parents tried everything to recreate how the clock could have landed so far away, but nothing worked. It didn't make sense. Years passed, and the next big incident happened when I turned 16. It was winter, and I was up late playing games. Around 2:30 a.m., I turned everything off and looked out the bay window in the Orange Room to check if the lights outside were off. That's when I saw it. A face staring back at me. It was pale with an unnaturally long shape. I panicked and ran to wake my parents. My dad grabbed a metal bar and checked the house and yard, but there was nothing. No footprints, no tracks in the snow, no sign of anyone. But I know what I saw. It was a face. That's when my old nightmares returned. The exact same ones I had as a kid. The orange room became the source of other strange things too. Once I took a Snapchat selfie in that room, and a tan figure appeared in the background. Another time I took a photo, and my eyes were blacked out in the picture. I moved out soon after, and once I was gone, the nightmares stopped, and life felt normal again. For a while, nothing else happened, until 2 weeks ago. We were decorating for Christmas, and I was moving ornaments between trees when I heard it. The music from my mom's Charlie Brown snow globe. I froze. The snow globe was on a shelf in the orange room, and I watched as it suddenly stopped playing. My mom walked in and asked if I turned the dial. I told her no and held up the ornaments I was carrying to prove I hadn't touched it. The snow globe's dial is on the bottom and hard to turn. It would have taken both hands. I asked when she'd put it on the shelf, thinking maybe it was a leftover movement, but she said she'd placed it there 5 hours earlier, right after I woke up. I don't want to go back in that room. Something about it feels wrong, like I'm being watched or intruded on something I don't understand. Christmas is coming, and I know I'll have to go in there again. But honestly, I'm dreading it. I don't know what will happen next, but I can't shake the feeling that the orange room is far from done with me. That's a wrap for episode 36 of MsStoryMystery. If these stories gave you chills, don't keep them to yourself. Like, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend who loves a good scare. Got a story of your own? Drop it in the comments or send it my way. You might just hear it on a future episode. Thanks for tuning in, mystery seekers. And as always, stay curious. Until next time.